Happy Thursday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect.
Hey, Bill, talking about the vastus lateralis, I heard you say in one video that it twists the femur into internal rotation. If it's on the lateral aspect of the femur, how can it do that?
So again, you got to look at where it attaches. You got to look at the orientation of the muscle fibers themselves. And then you got to, we have to also look at it in context. Okay. So if I fix the distal attachment, so VL comes down, it contributes to the quadriceps tendon, it attaches to the patella attaches to the tibial tuberosity, right? So if I fix the tibial tuberosity, right? So basically, it's basically putting your foot on the ground kind of thing. Put my foot on the ground and I contract VL. Because of its orientation, because of its position, it's going to create an internal rotation force on the femur, but it doesn't cross the hip. Okay, so it's going to twist the femur inwards first. Then it's going to hit eventually you run out of like bony capability, right? Like the bone can only twist so far. So the bone twists inward and then it's going to pull the hip with it eventually, right?
Got it.
And unless you have another force that's acting on the other end, which is going to hold it into external rotation, which is really common. Okay, but that's basically what you're going to end up with. You do have a force that turns it into internal rotation. You also have that downward force into the ground that's going to contribute to that whole mechanism too. But if we're just looking at VL and its behavior, it's going to provide you that type of a turn. Okay.
Now that we're talking about some muscles too, with shoulder impingement, compression below the level of the scapula, you got the biggest muscle there, the lat. The lat attaches to that, to the humerus and does extension and internal rotation. Is that why you said that when you have compression, or one of the reasons why if you have compression there, it's going to steal early external rotation from the scapula because it's pulling it into that rounded shoulders, internal rotated position? Is that why? Because that's one of the
what if I fix the humerus? Okay. All right. So you're using a dead guy representation of lats.
Yeah.
So are you sitting at a desk?
Yes.
Okay. Would you stand up, please?
Yes.
And put your hands on the desk. So your arms are straight and you're kind of leaning on your hands. Okay.
Yep.
Got it? Okay.
Yes.
You got weight on your hands?
Yes.
Arms are straight.
Yes.
Awesome. Pick up your right hand, push through your left hand and turn your body to the right, but don't move your arm. So you're going to turn, you're making a turn to the right away from your left arm. Okay. Got it?
Got it.
Okay. So that's latissimus dorsi turning you to the right.
That's my left latissimus dorsi because I'm putting the weight.
That is correct, sir. Your left latissimus dorsi just turned you to the right. Okay.
Got
and
it.
it just put you in a position where external rotation exists. So that compression on the back of your thorax moved external rotation from straight ahead over to what is now your left. So there is no space in front of you where you can access external rotation because of the compression on the back of the rib cage. Do you understand? Do you see it?
So it's turning me into external rotation.
It's orienting you. It's orienting you into external rotation. That is correct. But external rotation, if you had full excursion and you were able to expand that posterior rib cage, external rotation would still be straight in front of you as you initiate arm elevation away from your body. But because of the compressive strategy on the back side, it moves it over that way. because
Over that
it's
way.
changing your physical shape, and therefore the space around you to access that motion moves from here to over there.
That compression. Okay. It moves it from more of that straight ahead plane, that sagittal
Yes, sir.
plane, more
So
to
what
that.
happens, so if I am compressed in that area and I don't have the external rotation space to create a space for movement, I immediately go towards my internal rotation behaviors, and then I run out of internal rotation at 90 degrees. And that's why people walk in and they go, my Hawkins-Kennedy is positive. And they say, I got impingement. And everybody goes, oh, you have a rotator cuff problem. Okay, you have a rotator cuff result. Okay, potentially, but it is a compressive strategy that changes your physical shape, which means that the space around you changes as to where you can access motion or how you access motion. It doesn't mean you can't put your arm in that space. It just means that the way you're going to do it is not going to be with what we would consider normal relative motion, which provides us ease of motion, right? You're gonna have a limitation based on the physical shape of your body. Okay. Now, the way that you described it with the lat as the internal rotator extender, is that what you said?
Yeah, extender.
That does work to a degree. So it's not a useless model. It's just probably not close enough to reality. It runs out of usefulness too soon, if you will.
Got it.
As far as providing a solution. Because the minute you expand that space back there that you just compressed with your latissimus dorsi, your motion comes back. And you eliminate what would be diagnosed as an impingement.
Question about the right oblique orientation and ER measures. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but when we get the right oblique, the left lower posterior starts to approximate sacrum and ilium, and it drives it up and over.
So you got to be careful. Yeah. But generally speaking, you're on the right track, but it's not going to be posterior lower. Okay.
It's going to be upper.
It's higher. Okay. So once again, it's like we're kind of talking about the same thing again this morning, right? It's like, okay, we call it a muscle and then it gets all distracted. And we got parts of muscles that are actually behaving separately from other parts of muscles. Okay. So I'm gonna give you a name of a muscle by tradition that will guide you in this. Okay.
Okay.
If you looked at piriformis,
okay,
and if you concentrically orient a piriformis, that will guide you to an understanding of the creation of the right oblique axis.
Okay.
Do you want me to show you real quick?
Yeah.
So if we look at, if anatomically speaking, if we look at piriformis being like kind of like right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm gonna do it on this side because I'm a better righty than a lefty here. All right. So piriformis is right there. It's actually on the front side here. Okay.
Yeah.
So if piriformis runs roughly, like if you were trying to find piriformis on a human being, you would say, well, where's the greater trochanter and then where's the PSIS, and you draw the line in between them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So if I contract piriformis, what's going to happen?
You're going to come closer together, and you're going to
yeah. So I have this diagonal line that's going to try to be a straight line.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about that, because everybody's going to go, oh, you externally rotate. Don't think that way. Approximate the two ends to make it the shortest possible distance. Okay. So what happens under those circumstances is that it's going to pick this up. So it's on this angle like this. Yeah. If I contract piriformis, it's going to shorten in this direction, right? But it's going to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so what it looks like is that.
Gotcha.
You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what pushes you on that. So if you look at it like this, and you appreciate the fact that piriformis is not a flat muscle, it is in this diagonal helical orientation, right? So if I shorten it, it's going to go like that. It's going to pull this closer to this, and it's going to do that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's not posterior lower. Posterior lower compression pushes me straight forward.
Okay.
Ah, yes.
Thank you.
You see the difference?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So again, and it's like, and then you have the question mark. Say, well, why would I choose to do one over the other? Well, okay, how tall is your innominate bone? How wide is your pelvis? Right? What is your helical orientation? How wide is your ISA? It's like all of those things come into play from a mechanical standpoint as to what is the best strategy under the circumstances for you to apply to manage gravity. And so there's subtle differences in how you would do that. Right? It's just like somebody that's 7 feet tall, walking against a really strong wind, and somebody that's 5'2" walking against the same wind, different strategies.
Right.
Right.
And so when you would go to your testing under those circumstances, would you expect the hip flexion to be more limited than the external rotation at 90 degrees?
Which side are we talking about, boss?
Left side.
I can't hear you.
Left side.
Left side would initially have more ER. Initially. Because so again, there's not one oblique, there's not one axis that this would tilt on, and how far forward is the center of gravity?
Right.
The farther forward the center of gravity, the more I start to get that little trickle down effect on the posterior aspect of the hip, where I start picking up more concentric orientation. You understand?
And you mean, so you would eventually maybe get the posterior lower if you're so far?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you will. But I have to push you farther forward.
Got it.
You see it? So I'm tipped up on this oblique, and it's like, oh, hey, you know what? You don't lose internal rotation right away either.
Right. Yeah.
You don't. But if I keep pushing you forward, it starts to disappear very quickly.
Right. Okay. This is making sense, because you've talked about it in several videos, and I think about different gradations of it based on certain presentations. I'm like, oh, is that the oblique axis? Is that the one? And I'm trying to find the one.
Did you say gradation?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the perfect word. It's the perfect word, because that's why there's not one singular representation, because everything is a gradient. Right? Everything's happening at the same time. So when I go on this oblique tilt, I may actually pick up internal rotation on the side where we talk about losing internal rotation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then as I keep shifting it forward, because I gotta move my center of gravity so I don't fall backwards and I don't fall forwards, right? So I have to shift my center of gravity. So I'm gonna move it forward and forward and forward. But the shape of the pelvis has to change as I do that. So I'm gonna start to pick up more of that posterior lower activity. You see it?
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why if you're doing traditional measures, initially you get this crazy external rotation representations where you get 70 degrees of hip abduction, which doesn't even exist, right? But it measures that way. And then you get the next person that comes in, you go, oh, they're on an oblique axis. I should expect to see all this crazy hip abduction, and you get 15. And then you go, how is that even possible? They're on an oblique. I know they're on an oblique. And it's like, oh, they got shoved forward so far that the muscle orientations changed again.
Right. And they lost the posterior lower, but you might test them on the right side on hip abduction, and they've started to pick up an expansive strategy in posterior lower because of the degree of the turn, and they'll have more on the right than the left.
I don't think they'll pick up an expansive strategy. I think what you'll see is that it just didn't compress as much because you're not unless you've got somebody that's walking around with their butt cheeks sticking way back in relative to the other one,
Right. Yeah.
It's like if you see that kind of representation, they got a whole lot of stuff going on there, but that's what it would have to look like for you to gain an expansive strategy, right?
Yeah, right. So it'd be just relative too. So you might see somewhat limited on the right, but more limited on the left if you're that pushed. Okay, got it.
Yes. And under those circumstances, you would see the traditional right shift in a squat.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
You see it? Because it's more expanded on the posterior right. And so if I squat down, I'm going to move towards expansion. That's why you get a right shift, is because there's more expansion in that direction.
And the reason you would initially have the ER on the left is because you just changed where that ER space is relative to the orientation of the pelvis?
Yeah, so you just tipped it forward, right? And turned it.
So now straight ahead is really out to the side.
So now we're back to
Christian?
we're back to putting your hands on the desk. Was it Christian?
Yeah.
We put his hands on the desk and we turned him. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, got
It's
it.
literally the same thing. Like what we just did that test with hands on the table, turn away from the hand, is what you just asked me about.
Gotcha.
Except you did it with your foot on the ground. Get it?
Got it.
All right.
Okay.
Let me give you a quick representation. Ready?
Sure.
Ever see a turtle?
It definitely did.
Okay. Turtles cannot applaud.
Absolutely right.
Why can't they applaud?
Because
They go to the concert,
I
they
mean-
love the songs, they love the band, but they just kind of sit there and they go, right? They can't.
they can't adduct, at all. They
Yeah. So they're out here. They're out here because they're flat on the front, big round back, plenty of ER,
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
no IR.
So you would say the turtle IR window is smaller. I mean, they have to IR to go forward, right? They have to push into the ground and go
So
forward.
yes, but that's why they walk with their feet out really, really wide, right?
Mhm.
You'll never see a turtle tightrope walker.
That would be dope.
I would love to see that, by the way.